All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Crusty Crystals. I'm Thomas Dale. Here it is. This is my little setup. This is the vibe that we got going on. We have a new show. Very excited about it. Very excited to be back with you guys and doing our thing. So, yeah, what about me? What about me? I am a psychic medium, also stand up comedian. I say, like, genetically, I'm a stand up comedian, but my soul is a psychic medium, or maybe my soul is a stand-up comedian as well. It's all of it. I'm a lot, and for those of you who already know me, you know that. So I'm excited to be back on this journey. I want to bring humor and lightheartedness to the spiritual world. The past 5 years, I've been trying to figure out what my new voice is because, a lot of you know me. I was a full-time stand-up comic for 12 years working in the business. And I love it so much. I love all my peers. I love the community. But I always had this feeling, you know what? Let's start from the beginning. Let's start from my visions in the 90s. Okay, so, in the 90s, late 90s, I'd be hanging out with my friends. And I would always get these visions of the future. I would always see fires and, government stuff and all these just a lot, And I used to say to myself, what is this? What are these visions? What is going on here? What are these insights that I'm getting? And I used to talk about it to my friends. And I used to say I think I'm going to be a voice in the future. I'm going to be, have a message for everybody. I have a message for the world. Without sounding crazy, because people say that, and my friends were always like, all right, Thomas, pass the blunt, moving on, whatever, maybe you had a little too much. So I didn't talk much about it, right? I was always into astrology. I used to do all my friends' birth charts on a little white, a little erase board. And I used to be able to feel people's energy. Well, I still do, but that was where it started. I would feel their energy. I would feel their truth. Sometimes I'd be talking to somebody and I would hear their thoughts and I didn't know what that was. So needless to say, I always thought I was a little wacky. I used to be like, what is that? You think you hear thoughts. You're thinking, oh, this person's a schizo. I'm not a schizo by far, by any means, because we've gone down the whole mental health thing and I'm fine. There's nothing, but that's what happens in this world. When you have these kind of abilities, or just like you, so many people are awakening to their abilities, to their senses, and they want to right away just tell you, oh, you're bipolar, or you're this, or you're that. And I don't think that that's the case for everybody. Yes, obviously that exists, and there is that, and we all have childhood trauma. It's part of the existence of being a human. But just because you have these feelings, or you have psychic abilities, or you have a intuitive sense, or you're an empath and you can actually feel people's emotions, because that's very real. Energy is very real. You can feel things with people. A lot of people could do it. I'm not just some special person. Everyone can do it. Not everyone, but many people are connected. It just is a matter of how much your brain can open up, or how much connected you are. I can speak to people who passed away. That's a big my brain is very open to be able to do that, or I was born to do that. But I think a lot of you feel that as well, and I think it's normal. So we're here to talk about that. We're here to illuminate all that. We're here to make it fun too, and just more normalcy about it. It doesn't have to be so the woo-woo world doesn't have to be so serious and zen, and you're constantly perfect, or you're constantly manifesting. Guess what? When you awaken and you have an awakening, you're not going to always be, it's not pretty, basically. It's not all of a sudden now you're just in touch with God and you're in touch with the energy of the universe. That's a lot. That shit is real and it's deep. So it's going to be messy. When you're evolving, think about it. It's your bones are growing, but it's your soul. So you get those leg pains when you're a kid. You get that feeling of growing pains. That's basically what's happening to your soul. Now, a soul, I know for some of you who might not be in this woo-woo world, or new to it, or just, maybe know me from stand-up comedy and you just love comedy and you're not that into this world. A soul is just energy. It doesn't have to be this ghostly thing, it's just energy. It's just, your soul is just energy within a human body. I believe that it creates your consciousness. So you're born, you have your brain, your nervous system, your hormones, your endocrine system, the whole thing. And I believe an energy jumps into your body activates your brain, the brain is activated, but it activates consciousness. That's how I feel it is. And then when you pass away, your body dies or ends, and the energy leaves your body, goes back into the universe. Or it can be reincarnated, or it can hang out with the family. But we'll get to that in another episode. So anyway, so that was in the 90s. That was in like the late 90s. I'd be hanging out with my friends. And, it just started then. I started to get these visions. So I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was waiting tables. I was like 20 years old and 19, 20. And I was like, I was on a journey. I've always been on this journey to evolve or to get to my truth, like my authentic self. Like, who am I? I never felt like I just fit into one place or one group. So in my mid to late 20s, I started stand-up comedy. I fell in love with it from the first time I got on that stage. It just hit. So, I mean, my jokes were, Britney Spears bits, but like I had bits about Britney. And you look back at your first set, it was at Caroline's, and that's not anymore. It was at Caroline's on Broadway. And, I just loved it. I was hooked. And every single day I got back up on stage. I was hanging out in Manhattan. I had my group. It just was everything to me. Stand-up was my life. And I excelled very quickly in it because it is what I'm meant to do. I am meant to make people laugh. I love making people smile. I love the art of comedy. I love the community of comedy. I love having that energy around me. Like I used to say to my friends, how lucky are we that we get to laugh for a living? Like, even when we weren't on stage, we'd be hanging out like at the Comedy Cellar at the table or hanging out outside of the Village Lantern where me and Andrew Schultz and Khalees Hawkins and Michael Blaustein and like Akash Singh, Case Rosso, all of us, we just, Derek Gaines, we all like created these shows outside of that little spot, and we like learned how to do comedy in that space. And it was one of the best times of my whole life. And I loved it so much. And I just had that passion. And I always say passion will fuel your success. And because I was so passionate, I just kept working at it and kept doing it and kept pounding the pavement and did my TV spots and did the festivals. And I loved it so much. And then I moved to LA, and I loved LA, and I loved the people in LA, and, all those guys, Theo Von, Andrew Santino, Amir K, my friend Grant Cotter, like just all these buddies, Jessime Peluso, Crystal, I just love them. I love all of them. And they're my family. And I looked at them, I said, this is my family for life. And I remember saying, oh, this is how I'll get known so that I can deliver my message that I used to talk about. And I was like, this is how they'll know me. Oh, I'm supposed to be a stand-up comedian. And then when I'm famous one day, people will know to come to me, and I'll give, when the world's falling apart. And this was, again, I'm going back to the 90s, when the world's falling apart and people are like, the world's not falling apart, it's fine. And it's like, no, there's going to be a lot of change in the future, a lot of chaos, a lot of growing pains. And that's when my voice will be needed. So then I was in that world in stand-up, but then I got lost in the stand-up world, and I kind of forgot my message. I forgot that I was doing that to get the platform. Because once you're in there, then it was all about fame. And it was all about, I need my TV show, and I want to be famous, and I want to be a star. And it was all of that. I forgot that I had this message about the universe and about love and about spirit and about your own gifts and how to kind of rebuild a society that is based on authenticity and your truth and helping each other and community and spirit. Like I said, I'm a medium, but I believe a lot of you are mediums. I believe a lot of you have psychic abilities. Humans have intuitions. I don't believe in all these coincidences. I believe in numbers and numerology and things being connected. We are energetic beings in a universe. We're on Earth that's part of a galaxy. There's so much going on out there, and it's so exciting, So I just always felt like, so I want to deliver that message. I want to help be one of the many teachers and leaders in this world. I'm not, if you hear anyone ever saying they are the leader, watch out for that guy, okay? Because nobody is the leader. There's going to be many of us. It's just about raising your voice. And hopefully it's a positive direction. So I was in the comedy business, and I think I lost my way. You know, like I was doing great. I was killing on stage. I was making people laugh. I was doing my job, but it was all about fame and it was all about like just ego stuff. And after a while, the applause, I didn't want the applause anymore because I think my soul was saying, dude, you're in it for the wrong reasons right now. You know, like I remember the last 2 years, this was before the pandemic, the last 2 years of my full-time comedy career, I used to have the host tell the audience not to applaud when they announced me because I was so like, I felt like a dancing monkey. And I was like, I don't want this applause. I want to come up to silence. And it was so great. Like everywhere, I did it all around LA. When I would be on the road, I would do it. I just didn't want the applause because it didn't feel right. It felt contrived. It felt like they were applauding just because they were told, because I wasn't a big famous name. So I was like, they don't know. Let me do my set. And after my set, you'll want to applaud. Let me earn the applause. That's where I was going because I think it was my ego dying. I wanted the lights dim. I didn't want the spotlight anymore. I was awakening. I didn't need the attention the way that I needed it. I think maybe for psychological reasons, like I needed that validation. I didn't need the validation anymore because my spirit was awakening. It was waking up. So I started so I started doing no applause, lower the lights. And I just was kind of like, I don't know if am I just not in the game anymore? Do I not have that fire? Do I not want this? And I started doing readings for people. And I said, because I have these other gifts. I was like, well, if I don't do comedy, what am I going to do? Like, I'm not going to go work at TJ Maxx or some kind of bank or something like that. I'm not that person, I'm Thomas Dale. I'm a little weird, like I'm not that person. So what can I do? And I said to myself, well, you get visions. And when you talk to people, you're always able to give great advice because you can feel their truth or you can feel what's going on in their mind or you can get messages, from their energy. So I started practicing, for free, just on friends. I would practice. And then I started getting messages from spirits. The mediumship, I did not know that I can do that. I knew I can get psychic stuff or visions, but the mediumship was new for me. And in those practice readings, people's past loved ones started coming to me. So I would say to the person I'm practicing my reading on, hey, do you have did your dad pass away when you were like 9 years old? Or because I'm seeing you were very young. And they were like, how'd you know that? Like, I don't talk about that. And I said, I think he's coming to me. Or like in a reading, a spirit would be showing me these very specific validations. And I would say to the person, hey, by any chance, I don't know if this is real or not, if I'm doing this truly, but did your dad, he's showing me like a purple heart. What does that mean? And she was like, oh my God, he was a purple heart in the war or whatever. I didn't even know what a purple heart was. I just saw the purple heart. So I mentioned it. So I said, oh my gosh, I think I'm a medium. And this was in like 2018. So I started doing that more. I started doing more readings, practicing with people. I'd go to the dog park with my dog, Truth, who for some of you that follow me already know and love. But Truth is my angel. We'll get to that. And I used to bring him to the park and I would practice readings on people for free just to see how it was working. And then I just, I started I remember Fahim Anwar, he's a comic in LA. I was telling him, dude, I think I want to do this full time. I think I want to take a break from stand up. I was always saying, I think the universe is protecting me from becoming super famous because I'm doing all the things you're supposed to do in the comedy world and I would kill it. But then the next thing, it didn't blow up. I was like, I don't know. I think the universe is trying to protect me from fame in this voice because it wasn't the right thing. And I was like, I think I want to do full-time readings. And he was like, dude, that's pretty cool, And I was like, I'll try it, so I started doing readings, and then we were shooting this Netflix thing. It was like a comedy competition show on Netflix. This was now 2020, and I had been, practicing readings for like a year and a half before, and 2020 came, and we were doing this Netflix thing. And I remember in my commentaries, when you're doing the interviews for the show on film, I was like, this is my last thing. I think, and I was telling my story about doing the readings and my calling and the visions I had in the 90s, the late 90s, late 90s, 2000. And I was talking about that. That was my storyline. And I said to the producers, if something happens in this show where I don't make it to the thing, I'm done. This is the universe telling me, Thomas, stand-up comedy is not your path for the platform. So we're doing it. We do the show. We do the first set of performances. I did great. Everyone was like, oh my God, that was so good. Well, guess what? It was March 2020. And I even said to the producer, I said, dude, just so you know, we're in a Mercury retrograde. And a lot of times if you start something or do something on a Mercury retrograde, it doesn't happen or something goes wrong or something. He goes, no, this show is happening. I was like, all right. And I said, if this doesn't happen, the universe is telling me I'm done. And he even said, comedy needs Thomas Dale, so you're not done. Well, March 2020, we all know what happened. After the first week of production, it was supposed to be like an 8-week production show. It got shut down. We were all put in our homes, lockdown, pandemic. And I just was like, I'm done. That is it. I am not doing it anymore. And I started offering readings virtually. I started doing that. And they just started taking off. And then I went on some of my friends' podcasts, some of my comedy friends' podcasts, and did readings on there to like promote what I'm doing. And I just started doing them all the time. And I'm a hypochondriac too, so I didn't want to, like, when they were still doing stand-up shows, I was like, I just can't. Like, please, when the pandemic happened, I was like spraying people's doorknobs with Lysol. Like, I was nuts. I will admit it. I was the mask. I had goggles. Like, I have a picture of me. It was like so over the top. But that was, again, before this past 5 years, I have evolved and grown. I've been in this cocoon. I've been working on my hypochondria and, my anxiety, because I'm a human. That's why the show's called Crusty Crystals, because sometimes your crystals are not always shiny. Like, that's the way it goes. That's life. Even if you're a psychic medium who's connected to the universe, who is, giving readings, I still have my own day that I'm dealing with and my own experience in life. And hypochondria and anxiety was one of them. So I've been working on that the past 5 years. It's just been a whole journey. And I just, I remember saying, I'm done. And I did the readings, and the universe spoke because the readings took off. And I have a nice little clientele with that. I have people that I read over and over. And these relationships, I love watching the people I read. I love watching them grow. I love watching them heal. That's one of the best things. I love watching some of their grief gets healed, or I don't know if grief can ever get healed, but it subsides a little when we're getting some beautiful messages from spirit. But even when it's not medium heavy and it's more of like a psychic thing or unveiling your truth, that helps people too. And it's just beautiful. And the past year, I'd say, like, I've really just embraced it. It took me a couple of years. It really took time. You don't just jump in from stand-up comedian, touring over the country, laughing every day, and you're in the comedy clubs, and everybody's drinking, and it's fun, and it's wild, and you could just, you could be crazy on stage, and that was the thing too. I just was done celebrating all the crazy, like I knew there was more depth. I knew inside I had this soul, this message. I'm this person. I didn't want to just, everything wasn't a joke to me. And I got lost in that. But once I started, your soul will never let you stay lost for too long. That's the thing. And that's the thing you have to have faith about. Your soul will never let you stay lost for too long. So it started waking me up. And it was like, dude, not everything's a joke. And I know that. And I didn't want to just be the dancing clown, But I got lost in it because the ego was loving the applause. And so now I've embraced it more. It was hard to say, to go from all that to just, me and Zoom. And, I have in-person sessions as well, but or I'd go to people's homes and do a reading there, or on the beach. We do readings sometimes. That's in LA. We're in New York now. But although we can go to the beach, Long Beach, we'll see how the summer goes. But that humidity, I don't know, folks. But yeah, it's just become a real beautiful thing. And I've embraced my position. I've embraced this finally, finally, I was struggling to really say, okay, well, because that's also a heavy thing too. You're talking to dead people all day, that's heavy. You don't just sign off and then all of a sudden it's gone. I'm carrying that energy with me, or I'm feeling it, or I'm feeling other people's energy. So, the more I opened up, the more I opened up like my throat chakra and just my light, they call it. Once I let my light shine for the spirit world, I couldn't be in groups a lot. I started getting anxious because even like a lot of sound was bothering me, because you have to remember this work, mediumship, psychic mediumship, it's very real, whether you believe it or not. Or I don't work with skeptics because it's just a low vibrating, draining energy. You can be skeptic. I love you regardless, but you don't have to do a reading if you're skeptic. I always say that. But always keep your mind open. If you don't, just because you don't understand it or you don't see it. I just was like, this is so real and this is so heavy. And it changed my life, my everyday life. Like I said, I couldn't go to big groups anymore. I could, but it like overwhelmed me sometimes, or loud noises would make me, I'd be like, oh God, like it just irritates me. So I isolated. It was me and my dog Truth for the past 5 years. We did 5 cross-country trips. It was, those were the best. The cross-country trips were just, there's something your soul loves when it's just on the highway, just free, just in the mountains, going through Utah, Colorado. Those are my favorite states to drive through are Utah and Colorado. Heavenly. Like when you're driving through those mountains, through those rocks, there's something bigger than you. I know it because I speak to the spirits and I'm connected to the universe, but it just reaffirms, it really validates. You're like, yeah, I know science creates those things and stuff like that, but something creates science. You know what I'm saying? Or the elements or atoms and all that stuff. I'm not a scientist, so I don't know that. I go off of spirit stuff. And I believe one day science will, because, people, they need their science to prove everything. So I believe one day science will prove that. And then in years to come, then they'll say, oh, we were wrong about this, but now it's this. So go with your heart, Like I want people to get more in touch with their souls, their energy, because we can be such powerful beings and we can be such powerful beings together. So we'll see. This can be a movement. Crusty Crystals can be the start of a movement. We'll see. So anyway, so here's my little book here. I have all my notes and all the things that I want to do. So, you're going to see me here. And I'm also going to introduce ChatGPT. I've been using him. AI, pretty incredible. I was resistant to ChatGPT. I was resistant to it. But finally I got to it once I decided Crusty Crystals was going to be the podcast. And what I love about the name Crusty Crystals, by the way, shout out to my friend Brady. Brady helped me with that. It describes my voice currently, because that was the thing. The past 5 years, people were like, why aren't you doing a podcast? You have such a unique perspective and a unique voice. You should be doing this. You should be doing that. And I was like, I don't know what my new voice is yet. I don't know what I want to say. I don't know how I want to say it, but I want to be authentic with it. I want to be truly who I am. And in the spiritual world and in, meditation and yoga and all that stuff, it's all very like Zen and chakra, and you got crystals hanging from your freaking ass, like I'm not that person. I love my crystals. I love my chakras. I love all that stuff. But like, I wasn't buying the costume, like I wanted to still just be myself, and myself is a little crusty, like in the sense of, I'm not always positive, like I'm not always like, just like, oh, things will work out. And let me tell you, manifesting, that is some real shit, because when I started stand-up comedy, I was listening to Abraham Hicks and Bashar, and I was doing all the things that you have to do to manifest. I was doing the morning pages from The Artist's Way. I was, hugging telephone poles and saying, I'm so blessed to be able to feel this pole with the senses of my hand. I was doing all that stuff. And it worked. I manifested amazing things in comedy, I believe, because of doing the work in manifesting world. But like I said, awakening is not pretty. And, it's not always rainbows and light. So I didn't want to get on a podcast and just be this spiritual guru guy and not act like I wasn't just having full on paranoia attack an hour before I got to the studio, or having these intrusive thoughts that I was dealing with. I didn't want to act like that wasn't happening. But at the same time, I'm a leader and teacher of this message. So I wanted to make sure that, I did get myself more zen and ready to do that. And I feel I am. I feel that I finally am very solid in the message and the direction. And I understand my mediumship, and by doing readings with people and doing that work, it's been just mind blowing and just the most beautiful experience that even more beautiful than being a successful stand-up comedian and doing that work. I mean, this work with the work I do with people has been so deep, so poignant, and so just magical that like I wanted to just really focus on that. You know, I didn't want to like, you know, I didn't want to like be doing that and doing performance stuff. And I was still doing some stand-up. I actually took off from stand-up completely for like 3 years, from 2020 to like 2023. And then when I got back from one of my cross-country trips, I started performing at the Laugh Factory again. And it really was like riding a bike. Got on stage and just boom. It was just like I never left. But it was such a dichotomy. You know, I'd get up on stage and, oh, we're talking about this, we're talking about that. And, oh, straight boys, I love you. And, you know, all this stuff. And, oh, jerking you off, you know, like all that kind of stuff. And then I would get back to my readings and be more centered, more grounded, more connected to spirit, more, you know, just more like, I guess, serious. But in my readings, they're not always serious. We're fun. We have fun. But I wanted to figure out how to bring the two together. And that's when we came up with Crusty Crystals. I was like, that's how I can do it, because I can be authentically Thomas. And Thomas, like I said, is, you know, just being a real person who has abilities, you know, and is also funny and can also be pessimistic and a little, you know, like, what's that word that I'm looking for when that a lot of stand-up comics are? They are like some cynical, you know, sometimes a little cynical. But you know, and I'm on the manifesting journey too. You know, I go to like my Reiki circles and my energy healing circles, and you know, just the practitioner can also be the patient, you know? So I wanted to just really like work on myself, because I felt like if I can lead people, I have to authentically be like a lot more healed too. Okay? So I really worked on myself and kept developing the skill and developing the community that I have with doing readings. And now I feel like I can come back to the performance world and the comedy world, because now I know the message. I remember the message. I remember that voice. And I look at the people I do readings for as like my family now. I care about them. Like I care about them. I don't just sign off and I don't remember readings, but I remember the feeling that the person that I felt for them. So anyway. So let's see, what do we got? So the show, what's the show going to be? The show is going to be fun and entertaining, but also deep and whimsical and poignant, and an evolution, basically, an awakening, part of the awakening journey. That's what Crusty Crystals is going to be. And that's it. So this is what I wanted to remember. Perfect. So I want to dedicate this very first episode, to my friend Chris, who last week he was hiking. He had a heart attack and he passed away. But the thing that he was one of my closest friends in LA. He actually is the godfather of my dog, Truth. He was the most selfless person ever that I've ever met. But the point of the story that I'm telling you is, the other day I came home, and at the end of my driveway was this penny. And I just looked at it and I just was like, ooh, that it just stuck out to me. Like it didn't look like it just dropped. There was kind of like some sticks around it, and it felt a little weird. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know about that penny. That penny feels very weird. I was like, and I in my head, I was like, is there a witch that's trying to put like a spell on the house? Or, so I like, cause again, that's my mind, again, Crusty Crystal, you know, like it's not always like, ooh, penny from heaven. Like I was just in that moment, you know, I was in a place of, that's a witch. That's a penny from a witch. So I picked up the penny and I threw it down the street. And I was like, I don't want that. Get out of here. No witch spells. So the next, maybe it was like 2 days later. It was only 2 days later. A friend of mine who's also a psychic medium, she texted me. We do a lot of work together. Like we do a lot of like meditating together and like growing our gift and working on like expanding the abilities. So she said, Thomas, Paula, that's another friend of ours who's awakening. Her psychic abilities are starting to awaken. She goes, she had a dream, And she texted me today and she asked, did Thomas's friend from LA die? I hadn't posted about it and I hadn't talked about it with anyone. She said, did Thomas's friend from LA die? And my friend Daniela said, I don't know. So she goes, I had a dream, and in the dream, there was this guy that Thomas was trying to get in touch with, and the guy was giving him a penny, and the penny was for good luck. And 2 days before my friend Chris passed away, we were texting each other, and I was telling him about the podcast. I showed him the logo. I showed him the bio, and he goes, dude, this is brilliant. This is so you. This is perfect. This is what you've been trying to figure out, how to bring the two worlds of comedy and spirituality together, how to be real and authentic with your new voice. He goes, this is perfect. And he passed away 2 days later. And I had said to him, Chris, you know, you can come to me, like, you know, in spirit. I was like, you can talk to me, communicate with me. And I believe he put that penny there, because then he came to my friend in her dream and showed the penny and was saying, you know, reaching out for good luck and saying, everything's going to be okay and you're on the right path. So, you know, I went back to that street I went right, and I was like, I got to find that penny. It wasn't from a witch. I knew it stood out for a reason, but because I was in one of my days, I was in one of my crusty days where I just was like a little bit like, that's a witch. You know, any other day, maybe I'd say, oh, penny, I would pick it up. But like I said, you know, even someone who's connected to the universe and even somebody who has all these abilities, you're a human being. You're going to have these days. You know, it's like when I'm doing readings, I'm in a meditative state. So I'm able to just leave all the stuff at the door and do the reading. But when I'm not in a meditative state and I'm just coming home from the grocery store, you're going to catch me off guard sometimes. So I saw that penny and I thought it was a witch. So I went back and found the penny. And what's interesting is the penny it's all beaten up. And it's all crusty, you know, it's a crusty penny. And I said, this was me. This is symbolic because, you know, I believe it was sent from heaven and it's still beaten up. And even things sent from spirit and things sent from heaven can still be beaten up and torn and through it, you know, they've gone through it, but they're still magical. And that's what Crusty Crystals represents. That you can be beaten up and you could have gone through it, but you still have your magic and it's still real. So this goes out to Chris and thank you. And I'm excited. Thank you for joining us at Crusty Crystals here at Floored Media. And we're going to see where this goes. And I'm excited to be here and to do it with you guys. So I'm Thomas Dale. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time.